I was setting the table when Mom mentioned it, her voice as calm as if she were announcing the weather. "We're taking your sister to Miami this weekend. You're not coming." The words hung between us, sharp and casual all at once. Dad didn't look up from his plate, just nodded while scrolling through the news on his tablet. The clatter of silverware filled the silence that followed. I sat down across from them, trying to keep my face neutral. 33 years old, a full-time graphic designer who'd moved back home after a long breakup, and somehow still the kid at the end of the table waiting for permission. Lily, my younger sister, wasn't even there to witness it. She was at work, probably packing for the trip she apparently knew all about. I forced a smile, the kind that stretched too wide. "Sounds fun," I said. "You two deserve a getaway." Mom looked relieved, maybe even proud of how mature I sounded. "It'll just be a few days," she added, pouring herself more wine. "You'll have the house to yourself." That last line landed harder than she realized. I nodded, finished my food, and excused myself before the tears had time to form. In the kitchen, I rinsed my plate under the faucet and listened to their muffled conversation in the dining room, something about flight times and sunscreen. Upstairs, I opened my laptop, half-heartedly checking emails from clients in Charlotte. The usual freelance chaos felt comforting proof that somewhere outside this house, I was needed. When my phone rang, I almost ignored it. Grandpa Harold's name lit up the screen. His calls were rare and always gentle. "Sweetheart," he said, cheerful as ever. "What time are you landing tomorrow? I've already got the grill set up here at the rental." I froze. Landing where he hesitated. In the Keys. "Your mom said you and Lily were flying down together for the family weekend." I stared at the ceiling, the hum of the old vent fan filling the silence between us. She must have mixed something up. I managed. After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time, phone still in my hand. The laughter from downstairs floated up through the vents, warm, distant, and suddenly meant for someone else. That night, I couldn't sleep. The ceiling fan hummed softly, turning the room into a carousel of shadows. Grandpa's voice kept replaying in my head, looping over the same impossible question. "What time are you landing tomorrow?" It wasn't the first time I'd been left out of something. It just felt like the most deliberate. When I was 10, Mom took Lily to Disney World and told me I was too old for cartoons. I'd stayed with Grandma that week, helping her bake pies while pretending not to care. Years later, when I needed a small loan to cover rent during a freelance dry spell, Dad said they were tight on cash. The next month, Lily got a new car with a big red bow on it. Back then, I told myself families had their favorites. Every family did. I learned to make peace with Scrap's attention, praise, love whatever floated down when the spotlight missed me. But now, sitting in the dim light of my childhood room, that peace felt more like surrender. I opened an old shoebox at the back of my closet, the one labeled photos before everything changed. Inside were years of family memories, glossy and uneven, vacations, birthdays, graduations. I flipped through them slowly, noticing the pattern for the first time. Lily on a carousel, Lily at the beach, Lily holding the puppy Dad brought home for the family. I kept searching for myself in the edges of those frames, the arm holding the camera, the shadow on the sand. I was there, just never the one being looked at. Downstairs, the fridge door opened, then closed. My parents' muffled laughter floated up through the vents again. I turned off the light, lay back, and tried to match my breathing to the rhythm of the fan. I'd told myself I was used to it. Maybe I had been, until tonight, when the truth stopped feeling old and started feeling personal. Morning light slipped through the blinds in thin, accusing lines. I was still half-dressed for work when my phone buzzed again, Grandpa Harold's name flashing across the screen. "Morning, sweetheart," he said, his voice bright and windblown. In the background, I could hear gulls and the soft crackle of charcoal. "I'm just getting the grill ready." "When are you landing?" My breath caught. "Landing in the Keys," he said, like it was obvious. "Your mom said you and Lily were flying down together." I figured I'd pick you girls up from the airport. I pressed my hand to the counter, staring at the half-empty mug of coffee. Grandpa, I said carefully, I'm not coming. I wasn't invited. The line went quiet, except for the hiss of the grill and the ocean's slow inhale. When he spoke again, his voice had changed lower, harder. That's not what your mother told me. He paused long enough that I imagined him standing there, apron on. The phone clutched in one hand, realizing something had gone wrong. Hold on a second, he said. A minute later, my phone chimed again. A photo popped up: Dad in his linen shirt, Lily in a sun hat, Mom smiling with her drink held high, palm trees behind them. The caption read, "Family Trip 2025. I felt something twist in my chest, not rage, just the heavy, familiar ache of being erased. Grandpa called back. "Amelia." "Are you sure I'm sure?" I said quietly. "They told me they were going with Lily. Just Lily." He exhaled through his nose, slow and steady. "All right," he said. "I'll take care of it." When we hung up, I stood there staring at the photo until my screen dimmed. My parents had texted me once that morning. "Remember to water the plants, nothing more." Outside, a truck backfired on the street, the sound sharp and hollow. I realized my hands were shaking. Somewhere in Florida, my family was having breakfast by the ocean, and for the first time, I didn't know if I wanted to be part of it ever again. I told myself I wouldn't look, but the moment I opened Instagram, my resolve cracked. Mom's post sat at the top of my feed, 3 smiling faces under a spray of sunlight. Dad in a straw hat, Lily leaning on his shoulder, Mom in a coral sundress holding a cocktail. The caption read, "Finally together again. Family only." My throat tightened around the words, "family only." I scrolled through the comments, heart emojis, old neighbors saying, "You all look wonderful," and one from Aunt Susan, "So glad everyone could make it this year." Everyone, I clicked out before my pulse could climb any higher. The family tablet was still on the side table in the living room, Dad's old iPad we all used for video calls with Grandpa. It had the same shared messaging app, still synced to the family group chat. I hesitated, then opened it. At first, just photos of hotels and menus. Then messages Mom, "Let's keep this simple. No need to tell Amelia, she's been so stressed lately." Lily agreed. "She'll just make it awkward." Dad flights confirmed. Lily, "Pack light this time." I scrolled further, the words blurring. 3 weeks of planning, and not one mention of me. I sat there, knees pulled up, reading until the letters stopped making sense. My name wasn't missing by accident, it had been erased on purpose. I took screenshots, not to send or expose, just to prove to myself it had really happened, proof that I hadn't imagined it all these years. For a long time, I just stared at the tablet. The room felt smaller, like the walls were drawing in. At 11:30, I finally plugged it back in and walked to my desk, trying to lose myself in work. My inbox blinked with half-finished designs, unanswered client notes. I clicked aimlessly, unable to focus. By noon, my phone started vibrating. First Mom, then Dad, then both one after another. 12 missed calls in 10 minutes. I didn't answer. Instead, I turned my phone face down and listened to the quiet press against the walls, a silence so thick it almost sounded like weather rolling in. That evening, the house was quiet enough to hear the tick of the kitchen clock. I was heating leftovers when my phone buzzed a FaceTime request from Grandpa. I almost declined, thinking he just wanted to check in again. But when I answered, the screen split into 4 squares. There they were, Mom, Dad, and Lily sitting around a dining table draped with linen and wine glasses. The same table I'd eaten at 2 nights before. "Evening," Grandpa said. His tone was polite, too polite. "Looks like everyone's together." Mom smiled, brittle. "We were just having dinner. You should have told us you wanted to join." "I didn't," he said calmly. "I wanted to ask something." He adjusted his glasses, and I could see the reflection of the ceiling fan above him, spinning slow. Which one of my granddaughters stopped being family? The silence was immediate. Lily shifted in her seat, eyes darting toward our mother. Dad cleared his throat. "Dad, this isn't the time." "It's exactly the time," Grandpa said, his voice steady as stone. "You told me this was a family trip. I just want to know what part of family means leaving someone behind." No one spoke. The faint clink of a fork against a plate was the only sound. Mom reached for her glass, her smile trembling. "You're overreacting, Dad." It was just, he cut her off gently. "Don't lie to me. You raised 2 girls. Don't teach one of them she doesn't count." Lily's face flushed. She looked like she wanted to speak, then lowered her eyes. The call ended with Mom's nervous laugh echoing through my phone. I sat there at the kitchen counter, watching my reflection fade from the black screen, realizing silence had finally said what I never could. The next few days passed like a slow storm clearing no thunder, just the heavy air that lingers after. No one called. No one showed up. Mom and Dad flew back from Miami on Tuesday. I knew because the garage door opened and closed twice that morning, followed by the sound of suitcases bumping up the stairs. No one knocked on my door. On Wednesday, Lily posted a photo from the beach, a pastel sunset. Her feet in the sand, captioned, "Grateful for family." By nightfall, the post was gone. I didn't know if she deleted it herself or if Grandpa had called her too. Thursday came with a single message from Mom. "You didn't have to involve Grandpa." I stared at the text until my vision blurred. I started to type, "I didn't involve him." He called me, then erased it. Whatever I said, it would sound like noise to people who had already turned down the volume on me. By Friday, I needed to get out of the house. I laced my shoes and started running, the way I used to when I lived in Charlotte back when solitude meant peace, not punishment. The air in Asheville carried that sharp, early spring chill, the kind that wakes your lungs. I ran past the same streets I'd walked 1,000 times as a teenager. Only this time they felt different, wider somehow, as if silence had stretched the world open. Each morning that week, I ran the same route, past the bakery that still smelled like butter and cinnamon, past the old movie theater with the broken marquee, past the edge of the ridge where the mountains met the fog. I didn't time myself, didn't care about pace or distance. I just ran until my chest ached and my thoughts thinned out enough to breathe again. By Sunday, I'd almost forgotten what their voices sounded like. The quiet had settled in, fully not empty, not cruel, just steady, like the hum of the mountains reminding me that not all silences are meant to be filled. A week later, Grandpa drove up to Asheville in his old Buick, the same one that still smelled faintly of pipe tobacco and lemon drops. I heard the tires crunch over the gravel before I saw him. He stepped out slowly, wearing his brown cardigan despite the spring sun, and held a white envelope in his hand. "You got time for coffee?" "Kiddo," he asked, like it was just another Sunday. We sat on the back porch, steam rising from 2 mugs, the mountains layered blue and endless behind him. He placed the envelope on the table between us, neat and deliberate. "Open it when you're ready," he said. I labeled it so you'd remember why. Across the front, written in his tidy script, were the words, "To be opened in honesty." My fingers hesitated, then tore the seal. Inside was a single document, folded twice and stamped by a notary. I scanned the first lines before the meaning landed. It was an amendment his house in Black Mountain, the one he'd built with Grandma before she passed, transferred into an irrevocable trust under my name. I looked up, stunned. "Grandpa, I can't, you can," he interrupted gently. "And you will. People who tell the truth deserve roots." My throat tightened. I didn't do anything brave. I just answered the phone. He smiled, the kind that softened the years carved into his face. "That's what honesty is, sweetheart, doing the small thing everyone else avoids." I tried to argue, but he waved it off and took a sip of coffee. "You don't owe me gratitude," he said. "Just promise you'll plant something there one day. Something that outlives all this noise." I nodded, tears slipping down before I could stop them, not from greed or guilt, but from the strange lightness of being seen without having to earn it. When he left that afternoon, the envelope still sat on the porch table. The wind picked up, fluttering its edges like it wanted to remind me that truth, once spoken, always leaves something standing. The news reached them faster than I expected. Grandpa didn't make announcements, but small towns didn't need them. One person saw him at the courthouse filing the trust papers. Another mentioned it at the grocery store. And by the next afternoon, my phone lit up. Mom called first. Her voice trembled, caught somewhere between guilt and fury. "He's punishing us," she said. "Do you have any idea what this looks like to people? He's making us out to be villains." I pressed the phone to my ear and kept my voice calm. "He's just making things official. That house was supposed to stay in the family. It still is." I said, "I'm family." She didn't reply. The silence between us felt older than both of us combined. An hour later, Dad called. He didn't shout, but every word carried the weight of disappointment. "Your grandfather's lost his judgment. He's letting emotion ruin what's left of this family. You could have stopped him." I didn't bother explaining that I hadn't known about the amendment until he handed it to me. The story was already written in their minds. By evening, a text from Lily blinked on my screen. I didn't know it would go this far. Neither did I. I typed back, "It was the truth." 2 days later, Grandpa asked everyone to come for Sunday lunch. "No lectures, no lawyers," he said, "just food." When I arrived, the table was set for 5, but only 2 chairs were filled. Grandpa looked up from his plate and gave a small, knowing smile. "Guess it's just us." Kiddo. We ate in the quiet rhythm of clinking forks and distant birdsong. Afterward, he poured coffee and said softly, "Funny thing about family meetings, they show you who still believes in the word." I looked around at the empty chairs, sunlight cutting through the lace curtains, for the first time in months. The quiet didn't sting, it just told the truth out loud. 3 weeks passed before Lily showed up. She didn't text ahead or knock loudly, just stood on the porch holding a paper bag that smelled faintly of coffee and cinnamon rolls. I opened the door, and for a second, neither of us spoke. "I brought breakfast," she said, her voice small. "Grandpa said you still like the ones from Haywood Bakery." We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I used to braid her hair before school. She picked at the edge of her napkin, eyes red but dry. "I need to tell you something," she began. I knew about the trip. I didn't plan it. But I didn't stop them either. I told myself it wasn't my place. I nodded once, letting her speak. "I thought it was just a weekend." She continued, "I didn't think it would blow up like this. Mom's been crying. Dad's furious. And Grandpa, he won't even take their calls. I keep thinking if I'd said something, maybe it wouldn't have gone so far." Her voice cracked on the last word. I took a sip of my coffee before answering. "You don't have to explain. You were in a hard spot." She looked up, surprised. "You're not angry, I was," I said quietly. "But I'm tired of being angry. I just stopped volunteering to be forgotten." Lily pressed her palms to her face, exhaling shakily. "I don't know how to fix this." "Maybe we don't fix it," I said. "Maybe we just stop pretending it wasn't broken." She nodded, tears finally spilling over. We sat there in silence, the smell of cinnamon filling the room. For the first time in years, there was no performance between us, just 2 sisters, side by side, letting the truth be enough. By the time spring came, the air in Asheville had softened. The mountains were losing their edge, green returning where the frost had bitten hardest. Grandpa called one Thursday morning and said simply, "Pack a bag. I want to show you something before the crowds come back." We drove east for hours, the landscape flattening into fields and sky. His old Buick hummed steady, the radio murmuring old jazz that faded in and out of static. When the air started tasting like salt, he smiled. "Almost there." The beach he chose wasn't one you'd find on postcards. Quiet, wind-blown, a single lifeguard chair leaning at an angle. We parked near the dunes and carried a small cooler to a patch of sand where the tide reached without rushing. Lunch was nothing fancy: ham sandwiches, apples, and a thermos of coffee that had gone lukewarm by noon. We ate slowly, watching a pelican skim the water's edge. No photos, no performance, just the sound of the waves and the soft squeak of his shoes in the sand. After a while, he said, "You know, people spend their lives waiting to be celebrated. Birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, doesn't matter. But family isn't who remembers your birthday, it's who remembers your worth." I looked at him, the sunlight catching the lines on his face. "I think I'm finally learning that," I said. He chuckled. "Good. Took me 75 years. You're ahead of schedule." We stayed until the sky turned the color of copper. The wind tangled my hair, and for once I didn't bother fixing it. Grandpa dozed in his chair, hat pulled low, the tide whispering at our feet. When we packed up, I caught myself looking back at the ocean, half expecting to feel the old ache of being left behind. It wasn't there, just a quiet fullness, like something had finally clicked into place. On the drive home, Grandpa hummed softly to the radio, and I rolled down the window. The salt air moved through the car, cool and alive. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the extra seat in someone else's story. I was exactly where I was meant to be.